Assalamu alaikum, Elena here, the Muslim travel girl, and today we're talking about the things I wish I knew the first time I went for Umrah. Alhamdulillah, I have been for Umrah more times than I can count. I have a Saudi residence because my husband works in Saudi, so I do visit a lot and very often. I did Hajj this year. I have helped over 1 million people with information on Umrah on muslimtravelgirl.com, which is my main website and blog with tons of information on Umrah, not only here on YouTube. So if you want to check it out, I will leave a link in the bio. I got asked recently this question because I have been so many times, I forget those first times that I went and I was shocked with some of the things that I had seen over the years. I first went for Umrah 10 years ago, and that's when I started muslimtravelgirl.com and this whole DIY Umrah before it even became popular. I remember how shocked I was on some of them, and then I went for Hajj, and I have seen the change it has taken place over the years of how the guards treat people, of how the whole process has improved and everything. And because I don't see it from a newbie's point of eye, I kind of forgot it. So sister asked me the other day what I wish I knew when I started going for Umrah, when I went the first time. So here are my top 7 that I wish I knew. I will probably create a part 2 of this, but for now, let's get started. Number 1, Umrah takes less time than people actually think, because people go for 10 days, they think that their Umrah takes 10 days. But in reality, if you go through the rituals, and depending on the airport you arrive and the airport you leave and what times you arrive and how you want to do your Umrah, the actual rituals of Umrah only take about 2 to 3 hours depending on how crowded it is. So you will be in Haram if you are traveling from Medina, and I do have a blog post on muslimtravelgirl.com, and I will leave links in the bio of the post and the videos. If you are arriving, for example, in Medina and you're traveling from Medina, you will literally only be in Haram for maximum 5 or 6 hours. If you're arriving in Jeddah, you can put your ihram, for example, and you can make your intention about 40 minutes before your flight arrives in Jeddah airport. And then you have an hour and a half to get to Mecca, and then about 2 or 3 hours for your rituals. But all in all, the actual Umrah rituals only take 2 to 3 hours, which is not a very long time. And people sometimes get confused that if they stay 10 days, this is how long their Umrah is. And they want to buy all these products and, you know, fragrance-free products, that especially women, when they want and they ask me for all these products to buy. And I always say, you're actually in Ihram for such a short period of time. You don't really need anything apart from sunscreen, in my opinion. And I'm making another video on the products that I personally use and like for Umrah and Hajj. For the purpose of this video, Umrah actually literally takes a few hours. Just so you're aware, you can do multiple Umrahs, and again, they will take exactly the same amount of time. But once you complete your Umrah and you get out of Ihram, you are literally just in a normal state, and you can do other things. You can go to the mosque and pray, etc. But you're not in the state of Ihram anymore, and you're not doing Umrahs again. You're just praying in the mosque. Number 2 for me is pushing. I was so shocked the first time I went for Umrah of how much people push. And I have to say, I have done so many Umrahs. You might not like what I say, but women are the worst. Women to women are the worst people who push so much during Umrah. And everybody's trying to get through those small, especially at Tawaf, through those small little spaces to just get a few steps in front, and literally kind of like ruin my khushu. And this always frustrated me, and I have done many Umrahs, and every time pushing has not changed in the 10 years. And it's not going to change in the next 10 or 20, I feel, because it gets crowded, and it gets more crowded and more crowded. And literally a lot of people want to kind of, get the best experience possible. And this also takes me to my third part, which for me is selfishness. I don't want to be quoted wrong, but I feel every time when you go for Umrah, because for people it's their first time, or they've saved all their life, their money to go for Umrah, they're so focused on like, I want to be in front of the Kaaba, I want to touch the black stone, I want to like get there, I want the best experience possible, that they forget that there are other human beings around them doing exactly the same thing. And I feel people become more selfish, and astaghfirullah, may Allah forgive me if I word this wrong, but Sometimes we forget that we should give way, or we should be kinder to other people, and should be kinder to the elderly, and not push in front, or not push children. Things like this that, for me, pushing and selfishness kind of becomes one. And I understand where they're coming from, but as a first time visitor in Mecca, in my Umrah, this was shocking for me. And I remember I kept telling my husband, like, this is Umrah. Like, why would people do this? Why would they be so mean to each other? Why would they push me? And I was always very passionate about it. I have done so many Umrah now, it doesn't affect me as much. Although now I have other sets of issues with all the Umrahs I've done. SubhanAllah, like, you can never find that silver lining. But again, for me, it's just being a little bit more mindful. And I find that people are so excited to be doing Umrah that they forget to be mindful of other people, which kind of makes them a little bit more selfish. Another thing that really surprised me was no segregation. I know Islam is so big, and especially some cultures, on female and male segregation. And then you go for Umrah and this goes out of the window, because pushing and shoving and tawaf, there is no segregation. You are literally walking with men next to you, touching you, because there is no segregation, and they're obviously half naked. So just be mindful of that. And if you're not comfortable with that, go when it's not very busy, and do tawaf in the mataf area on the first and second floor, which normally you have more space to spread out and not touch each other. If you want to do Umrah and tawaf in the Kaaba area, then there is no segregation. You are not going to be able to get out of, touching someone, no matter how much your husband tries to protect you, or how much you try to protect yourself, simply because it is so crowded everywhere. There is no enough space for people to have space, which is what it creates that problem. But keep that in mind, because for me, it was also something very shocking. And I still remember telling my husband, I was like, Islam is all about segregating females and males. And as a convert, and as someone who went for my first Umrah, I found this really interesting and really surprising, that in the most holy place, there is literally no segregation, and you just have to get on with it. Even in the mosque, if you're not praying in the part of the mosque, but you're praying in the tawaf area, during prayer time, you will still might be praying in front of a man who came later, and he's praying at the back. So it's just something to keep in mind. You can watch more videos, but I found that quite interesting as a first time. Another thing that really surprised me was the distances in Mecca and Medina. If you're staying in the clock tower and you want to go to the Haram, which is literally, you can see it in front of you, and you're like, oh, that's not going to take me very long. It might actually take you 10 minutes to get into the Haram just from the clock tower, which is one of the closest hotels that you can stay in Mecca, simply because the distances are so vast. I always stay in the Jabal Omar development mode, like pretty much 95% of my time. And in order for me to get to the clock tower, if I want to go to the shops, for example, or to a restaurant, it takes 15 to 20 minutes to walk there. And it takes even 10 minutes without traffic, like without human traffic interrupting you, because distances are so big. So it is very easy to actually do 10, 20,000 steps without even doing your tawaf time, if you just wanted to explore more of Mecca or Medina. The structures are so big, it takes a long time to get around them. You can easily do thousands of steps without even counting your daily tawaf, for example. Talking about steps, my other thing will be road closures. And I obviously write a lot on DIY Umrah and news on muslimtravelgirl.com. And one of the things that I always kind of get asked is which gate to use, where do I go? And I always say, it really depends on the day, because the road closures, they decide pretty much on the day or a few days before. Even if I tell you something today, tomorrow it might change. They might have a road open today that will take you 5 minutes to go to the Haram, and tomorrow they've closed that same road and they're going to ask you to go around, and that's going to take you 15 minutes. They do that for crowd management during Ramadan times and during prayer times, and especially like Friday Jummah, because it gets so crowded and so busy, and they do have to manage the crowd to not have any accidents. If you are going for Umrah and you are arriving on a Friday, do not go to Mecca during Juma times. You can literally stay in the car 2 or 3 hours because of road closures and you're not going anywhere. If you are arriving on a Friday, make sure it's either a morning early flight or a night flight to avoid that time, because for several hours they would have closed the roads. My last point as a first timer, and I always find that very interesting, is people think that the thing you do in Mecca and Medina is literally pray and nothing else. And that is not really the case. The clock tower, which is the very tall structure we see, is actually several hotels, a shopping mall, a supermarket and restaurants and a food hall. So you can find a lot of brands down there. They have Sephora, which gets really crowded, especially at Isha time, with women shopping. They have lingerie stores, several other shops around, and people are always surprised when I will take a social media video and show the mall. And why are you in a shopping mall while you're in Mecca? You should know that you cannot pray 24/7, even if you are in Mecca. So you have to have some downtime yourself. And one of the downtimes, except spending time in the mosque, is to actually go for dinner and look around the shops if you want to buy gifts and things like that. They have Starbucks, they have Costa, they have pretty much any coffee shop you might think. They have a really nice cafe that I like. I have a review on that called Cafe Moment, I believe. And also they have my favorite female fashion shopping called Femi. I really like this store. If you want to visit it, this is my tip for you ladies in Mecca. But in general, just remember that they also have supermarket where you can shop if you have children, so you don't have to take a lot of toys. I actually buy very small toys for my daughter from the supermarket, just to keep her occupied during prayer times or in the hotel room. And then I don't have to lug this back into my suitcase or take it with me from the UK to Mecca, inshallah. So Bin Dawood has a lot of things for children. It has pretty much everything you can imagine that you might need. So in reality, even if you have forgotten something in your house, you don't have to stress and panic about it, because I'm pretty sure Bin Dawood will have a version of it. But these are my top 7 things that I wish I knew when I went for Umrah. If you like these videos and if you like this style of video, please give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe and comment below, inshallah, and share with someone who is going for Umrah. I will leave links to all my blog posts that I find interesting for you and the most interesting video here. I do have a newsletter and a free Umrah guide that you can download in the links in the description, inshallah. Until next time, assalamu alaikum.